Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is Take the Lead, Change the Game, a podcast for women leaders looking to deepen their knowledge and skills and find enjoyment in the process. We're powered by Safra Leadership. Safra Leadership is a cohort-based coaching experience designed to fuel courage and ignite impact among women professionals. I'm Lindsay Goldford Gray, and I'm here with my co-host, Mindy Gulati. We're the co-founders of Safra. Together, we bring a blend of leadership coaching, strategy, and lived experience to help women navigate challenges, seize opportunities, and lead with confidence. So welcome. Today, we're going to talk about resilience. This is a topic that Mindy spoke on last week. We were both at the Women's Well Summit, which was a conference for women lawyers to talk about our own well-being. And so Mindy gave us a great presentation on resilience, and we thought it would be a really nice topic to bring to you all in an abbreviated version. So, Mindy, why is resilience important now, kind of more than ever, really? I mean, or more than many moments in history?
Yeah, so I think resilience used to be sort of episodic, meaning, something big happens, something difficult, we've had those like pandemic, a crisis, and then you have to bounce back from it in some way. And that's sort of the typical way you look at resilience is it's something that you don't have to pull on all the time because there's not a crisis every day or there's not big giant changes in your life every day. But I think what's interesting now is we're in this really disruptive environment. And we've heard for a long time out of like the tech space, this whole like go fast and break things and disrupt. And I mean, I think it's annoying, but it's now it's like everywhere at all times. And so when since about 2023, I started getting asked by a lot of my clients who I do leadership work for. I started getting asked by a lot of them, like, can you talk about resiliency? Because our leaders are having a hard time like coaching their teams around resiliency. And it was interesting because I was like, this is a really important topic. Yeah. But now in the last year, I feel, and I think everybody feels that resiliency is no longer something that you have to pull from your toolkit every once in a while, maybe like once every couple of years, like you have this moment of really needing to lean into it. It's like constant now. Yeah. It's a constant need because of the disruption. And, maybe you could talk about what you think the disruption is.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's this technological piece that you talk about where it's like with the rise of AI, like we're in the legal profession and like the legal profession is going to just look so different in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years than it looks today. And so we're just constantly learning new things. There's also this, you and I talk a lot about the geopolitical aspect, right? We have a lot. It's like, right now we're, the U.S. is at war with Iran, and it's like, is the ceasefire going to be extended? Is it not? And like, how does that deal with that, which affects many lives of course, on a humanitarian perspective, but even with, we're talking a lot about gas prices and things like that. And then, of course, there's the economic piece, which always feels like a little bit sort of undercurrent under the surface. And so, geopolitical may be the thing that like comes to mind first, but I think now in this environment, especially for those of us that are in professions, like just the technology piece of that and how so many industries, including law, are just constantly changing in a way that's different than it was even a year ago, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what's interesting is that there's throughout history, there's obviously been geopolitical conflict, but it's different now because we're so interconnected. And the companies like I work for, it's no longer just like, we're in the US and we do this, I work with engineering firms that literally are being impacted by what's going on in the Iran war, Iran-US war, but also like planning and hiring and what are they supposed to be doing? I mean, it's like every day. And when I sit with clients that I've had for a long time, some of my clients I've had for, 5-10 years, we weren't having these conversations. These are new conversations of the stress of it. And so I do think AI is interesting because there is this, obviously it's going to disrupt and it's really going to change, but then there's also this feeling of like, do we even know what we're doing? Because there was a report out yesterday that I think like 400 CEOs were surveyed and they're saying they're actually not finding any savings with AI right now. And
Yeah, 'cause
that's
it's
on the
costing
news
so much.
is like,
Yeah.
oh, they're going to save so much money, but it's like, actually, it's maybe not. And so
Yeah.
I still don't even know if we can opine what's going to happen, if it's really going to take jobs, or if it's going to take jobs now and then they're going to have to rehire everyone when AI doesn't turn out to be what we thought it was going to be. So
yeah, for sure. Well, Mindy, since you have talked a lot about resilience in companies and then last week, can you talk to us a little bit about like what is resilience?
Yeah. So I think at the bottom line, resilience is the ability to come back after a setback. Like that's the most general kind of way to define it. And so that could look like things like when a personal or professional crisis happens or a big change happens, like, can you navigate that without completely falling apart? Like, can you rise to that occasion? A lot of what resilience looks like is, you know, being able to maintain sort of a rational perspective. It's about being able to take that stress and again, not crumble under the weight of it, but sort of like take a breath and figure your way out. I also think that resilience is really about adaptability and flexibility. And so when I talk to a lot of the companies I work with, a lot of the titles of the workshops I teach are adaptive and responsive leadership, because it's about something happens and we have to adapt to it. A lot of times it's not going away. And I think when we think about sort of back in the good old days, things would pass. I don't know that we're in that moment where things are going to quickly pass. Like I think we're in a once in a, you know, maybe 1,000-year cycle where things are changing so much that we're not going to go back to like a calm. So I think resiliency is like is now a tool that you should probably wake up in the morning and say like, how resilient am I? How am I able to be? And I mean, honestly, because the other thing I'm finding is there is probably the worst burnout that I've been seeing from people I coach. And I'm not talking burnout where you're like, oh, I'm just burned out. I work so much, I'm tired. Like psychological and physiological burnout is happening. I talked to someone yesterday that has to wear a blood pressure monitor because of how
how stressed they are.
They're in a AI disruptive environment. And so it's just, and I'm not saying that environments haven't been tough before, but there's something unique about our moment that we're in.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I, you know, as a lot of you probably know, I have a background in immigration legal work. And I feel like actually my industry, my specific niche has been living through this like constant disruption for a little bit longer. And one of the things that I would say like a year ago, as especially on a geopolitical level, things changed a lot again, was that like in the first round, it was really just the immigration advocates that sort of had to deal with constant policy changes, but now it's everyone. So like even on a geopolitical level, I think it has broadened so much. I mean, I feel like my industry probably lived through some of that before the rest of the world, but like it definitely, I mean, I remember waking up every morning and being like, what fresh hell am I going to wake up to
what's going to happen now? And I think a lot of people are, I mean, even like on the, you know, when I first started getting resiliency calls, they were minor, right? What the companies were going through. And when I started to get a lot of them was actually from some of my engineering firm clients last year when the tariffs happened.
Oh yeah.
Because it like killed their work. And they were calling me to say, Mindy, you know, we need you to come in and be with our leaders as we sort of deliver this news.
Right.
Because it is like, and so what I think is interesting in this moment too, is maybe this is the moment where we really truly see how infused like tactical expertise, technical skills have to combine with like emotional intelligence. Like in a way, like those two things have been set aside, I think, too much. But like now it's like, I literally will go and attend meetings where, you know, a CEO is saying, hey, tariffs have disrupted X and here's the, you know, and clients are canceling contracts now. And I'm on the call, not that I'm an engineer or know anything about this, but I'm on the call to give them a mindset, like opportunity to say, okay, how are we going to shift our mindset now that you've been given this news? There's also like, so that's what's happening is like, I think there's they're in a crisis, there's always room for growing. And I think the way to grow right now is to say, you can no longer separate like the parts of you of like being emotionally intelligent or being resilient from like your day-to-day work.
Yeah.
It's all needed all at the same time right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk through now like some different characteristics of a resilient leader, and maybe we can each kind of give some examples.
Yeah.
I'll start with self-awareness as being, being self-aware as a leader. And we actually just had a great conversation with this morning as we were coaching a group about really like how we are perceived, sort of knowing ourselves in that way. And when I think of my own self-awareness as a leader as it relates to resilience, I actually think about most commonly about when I decided to step back as the leader of the organization, and really knowing that like it was time, both from like a personal perspective, what I had going on in my life, where my own sort of mindset and energy was, but also just knowing that the organization itself was like ready to inject some like new and different energy, was probably my most critical moment of self-awareness as it relates to not only my personal resilience, but the organization that I was leading's resilience.
I love that, because I actually find there are a lot of people at the top of companies that need to move out.
Yeah.
And it's
and
nothing,
they'll just hold on.
and they'll hold on, but it's actually lack of self-awareness
Yeah.
and lack of thinking about the company.
Yeah.
So I love that you just said company resilience, because I find that executives, if anyone here is an executive of a company, like you do have to be very self-aware about your impact on the company, the company's health. And part of that is like, what are your strengths and weaknesses at this moment? It doesn't mean you have to leave the company forever and like go off into retirement, but it could mean you step down and you have an advisory role on a board or something.
Which is exactly what I went into senior advisor, and after taking some time and letting new leadership get started, for sure. One of the things, you were like to that tune, I was talking with someone earlier this week, and they were like, people don't, there's a common phrase that's like, people don't often leave job, they leave bosses. And so when you have a boss or a leader that's constantly stressed, taking it out on the team, not cultivating like a good culture, that can kill a team, an organization, a product just as easily as, a tariff can.
And that goes to the, is the company resilient? If you have these managers that stay and are not healthy, it makes the organization less resilient. The other thing that I want to talk about is adaptability. And I sort of mentioned that in my definition, but, you have to take an inventory of yourself of like, can I adjust quickly to new things? What happens when a change happens? Do I have a healthy sense of optimism? Can I find a way forward? And it doesn't mean that you don't say, WTF and like maybe scream into the void first, but it means like, can you fairly quickly be like, okay, this is reality. Now we're going to deal with reality. And now I'm going to figure out a path forward. And that can be really hard for people. And I'm not saying it's like, if a big thing happens, that you just within instantaneously be like, oh, this is really catastrophic, but I'm okay. Everything's fine. No, that's like toxic positivity. Adaptability is really seeing, okay, this is what's happened. How am I going to respond? And then shifting who you are and how you operate, which is one of the hardest things we do, because it's our behavior. It's a behavioral shift, but that is really a core characteristic of a resilient leader.
Yeah, I think adaptability, one of the things that can most inhibit adaptability, which is actually the topic that I spoke on last week, is this feeling of like imposter phenomenon and imposter feelings and perfectionism. Because in this world where, and I definitely face this a lot with, immigration, like when Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, people would be like, what are you going to do about Afghanistan? And I'm like, I don't literally know anything about Afghanistan. Right. And the feeling like, how am I qualified? And it's similar now. And like, for example, in the technology, it's like literally no one has been here before, nobody knows how to handle this situation. And so in order to adapt, we have to have this mindset of like, I don't know everything. No one knows everything, but like, giddy up, I'm going to go.
I want to make one comment that was really interesting is I was in a workshop about 2 weeks ago, and it was a company that was an engineering company that was discussing like communication and connection. And the topic was, and there was like lots of people there, hundreds, and we were all in breakout rooms and things. And the breakout room I was in, I found it fascinating because we were talking about generational differences in communication. But then someone raised their hand, and he's probably in his 50s, and he's like, this is the first time though, like, I think the generations were on a level playing field now, because none of us have done AI.
Yeah.
Whether you're 18 or 58.
Right.
Like we're all here together, and maybe this is going to help bridge. And I just love that I had to say that, because that's about adaptability.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of another thing is calmness. And I like this word calmness because I think it's a reminder, again, your mindset really matters in being resilient. And it's not that you're always going to be calm, but it's, do you have a way to calm yourself in these really big moments? In fact, this morning we were like sitting around with our coaching cohort, and a couple people felt frazzled for legitimate reasons. Yeah. And they weren't worked up, but you could tell they were like, they weren't really present. And so it's like, okay, let's do some box breathing. Yeah.
Just for 60
seconds and like close our eyes and just do it. And it's like, everyone has their way, but it's like, you have to remain calm in a stressful environment. Yeah. Because you will never get to any of the goods that can happen if you're, and you have to know yourself. Goes back to self-awareness of like, what are your signs that you need to engage? And maybe it's a quick walk outside, or, a quick snack, or call a friend, but just simple breathing is like, please don't forget that. I use it all the time because a lot of the stakes are high in my conversations, and I have to make sure that I'm coming in there calm, because if I don't, it's going to throw off the entire conversation.
The whole vibe will be different. And I have another one that I want to share that actually a coach that my daughter is working with for rock climbing mentioned, and I really like, because they will do these competitions. And for these kids, it's so high pressure. Rock climbing is an individual sport. Like you go, I mean, there's teams, but like you perform alone. And one of the things that she said is, within 15 minutes of when my daughter is done climbing, to actually do a voice memo for 5 minutes, and she has to talk for 5 minutes, and it's just a brain dump. And she's just talking about the round. She's not allowed to look at any scores before she does the brain dump. And so she does these voice memos for 5 minutes, but then the goal is like, you put it away, and like, you can send it to your coach later, your parents can listen, you can delete it, whatever you want, but then you put it away, and then it's time to like be centered and calm and like go have fun. Right. And I really love that. And actually now a few of her teammates are using it because it's so great.
That's
right.
a good idea.
And like, even if you get out of a stressful meeting and you're like really worked up, like just talk for 5 or 10 minutes into a voice memo, and like, you could choose to use it later, like send it to somebody later or not. Right.
Just delete it if you don't want to.
Because there's something that happens to your brain when you do that.
Yeah.
The next one, that you talked about last week, Mindy, was confidence. And I think being a confident leader is really important when you, especially in times of uncertainty where the team is just like looking to you as a leader for what to do next, or like where we should go strategically. And I want to make a really important point here. Like, confidence is not about like false sense of certainty, right? Confidence is not about like, we're going to execute and we're going to win. And, but, in times of uncertainty, we don't have all the information. Like, we don't know where AI is going. We don't know if the war in Iran will be gone, will be over in 2 months. Like, we don't know any of those things. And so confidence as a leader is really about, I am making the best choice. I and my team, hopefully, with collaborators or advisors, making the best choice with the information that I have at the time it's presented. Yeah. And like, then you got to kind of like pick and communicate and be like, and really be confident in like, I believe this is the best choice, and that we are going to adapt as things change. Like, we don't know everything, but really communicating that sense of calm and confidence to the team can really help people feel, for lack of a better word, like protected and safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you want to, and this goes to the next characteristic is good decision making, but you want to trust yourself that you can make a good decision, because then people will trust that you're making. So it can't be false. Because if you go in there and you're like, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to pretend like everyone will know what's going on. Yeah. But if you trust yourself and you are resilient and you've done these things, you can go in and build that around you and then make good decision making, which is one of the characteristics of a resilient leader, is the ability to make decisions when you don't have all the facts, when things are high pressure, when stakes are high. And it's interesting because there's some research, and I can't cite the source at the moment because my brain doesn't allow me to remember that right now. But I just gave a talk to an engineering firm about decision making when you don't have all the facts.
Yeah.
And the research says as long as you have around 70%, so maybe 65 to 70% of what you think you need, that's the time to make the decision. And I thought that was nice because it's like, and the research also says if you wait till like 90%, it's often too late, or the situation has changed, or you've missed the opportunity. And so I like this in my mind to be like, oh, if I have about 70% of the information, even though there's a lot of uncertainty, still I'm going to make the decision. So you need to be able to do that with data, but not solely relying on 100% of information. Because in these times, things are changing literally hour by hour, and you can't get analysis paralysis and wait for all the data, or
you'll never make any decision
the clock
ever.
Resets, and you're back to zero because in the last hour things have changed.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to talk next, I want to talk about perseverance and grit.
Yeah.
And so grit is defined as passion and perseverance over long-term goals, towards long-term goals. And so and then perseverance, which is a part of grit, is really sort of overcoming challenges and like being in it for the long haul, right? And so, with grit, we've done some talking about grit, but I want to, there's a woman by the name of Angela Duckworth, who's a researcher who wrote a really great book called Grit. But I remember reading specifically about sort of like the 4 things that contribute to grit. And one of the, so passion and perseverance for long-term goals. And the very first one really surprised me. And that was genuine interest and curiosity about the subject matter, which I find really resonates with me as someone who really loves to learn. Is when you are thinking about, let's say you're an engineer in an engineering firm, or you're a lawyer sort of stuck in the grind of, all of these changes, finding, hopefully you're passionate about the work generally, but finding pieces of that work that genuinely interest you and that you have curiosity about can really sort of fuel your ability to stay in it for the long haul. Yeah.
I think that's really important. And it's about that. It's a marathon. And I think we're in a super ultra marathon right now. So we're not,
probably for the rest of our professional lives.
I agree. So I'm like, we're in it now. And so however you need to have that grit, and I love her book, and it's something that really resonates with me, which is that I've sort of always had long-term goals, since I was a kid. And by having an interest and a passion, it keeps you going even when you're what is happening? And so I think with work, you do have to find that, and it could be a very niche part of what you do.
Right. Just a small piece of what
you do. But I do think we're in such a transformative time. I think grit is going to be needed for the long haul.
Yeah.
The last characteristic we want to talk about is, having, being grounded in your ethics, morals, and values. And the reason this is important is because during significant change, if you don't know who you are and you don't know what you stand for, it's so easy to get knocked over.
Oh man.
And so you're going to take hits during this time. And it doesn't mean you don't go back and forth a little bit, but if you know your morals, your ethics, your values, I look at it as the roots of a tree, and what happens is for a lot of trees, they need to get beat up, because when they get beat up, when it's really windy or there's storms, their roots grow deeper to hold them stronger. Yeah. So you don't want trees where they never get wind, or they're weak. And so I look at that's what I think about with a grounded in ethics, is I just envision a tree, and it's who am I? What are my ethics, my morals, my values? And I'm not going to get swayed from that. Yeah. And then, so when you're in these crises, when you're in this long game of grit, resiliency is also about taking a deep breath and saying, who am I in this moment? And how is that going to guide me? And the people that I work with who are the most resilient, and people I've known in my life, know what their ethics and morals are. They can tell you can feel it from them. and people who will sort of change their values and their morals are very sketchy, like they're not going to make it through this.
Yeah.
They can talk a big game, but like when they get challenged, and we all know these people, you've seen people get challenged, you've seen disruption. And I'm seeing it in the law where there are a lot of lawyers that don't know who they are and don't know what matters to them because they've been chasing something else. And now with this disruption, it's killing them.
Yeah.
So scary.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, who are you? Like,
Yeah.
why do you do this? Like, who are you in this as a lawyer? If you have a purpose and you're really grounded, you'll figure this out. Like you will figure this out.
Yeah. And there's a term that's used in the nonprofit space called mission creep.
Yeah.
And it's like, we can all just kind of like tick to the left a little bit, like compromise a little bit. And obviously like compromises are real and we have to make them, and we don't live in a world of black and white. But like, if you're not grounded in who you are and what your values are, either personally or organizationally, company-wide, you can end up like way off with mission creep.
Yeah.
And this makes me think of like one of the big conversations that happened, when I was an executive at a nonprofit is, will we take money from certain funding sources?
Yeah.
And it was a conversation where, initially it was like, no. And then, economic uncertainty became like, let's talk about it again. No, but it was a conversation that we did hold the line on because taking money from a specific funding source was not going to be in line with our values for this particular program. But it was really challenging not to, but that's an example of saying like, we are who we are and this is what we stand for, and we're not going to compromise on this piece.
And the last thing I'll say sort of personally on this is in how it ties into resiliency is I actually had something happen. I was a public defender when I started my legal career, and that's what I wanted to do. So that was like, this is it. I got the job. I was like, yes, like I'm set for like a long time.
Yeah.
And something happened that tested my ethics as a public defender. And I disagreed with a policy that the office was having us, was talking about. And I disagreed with it. And I knew who I was. I knew what my ethics were. I knew what I was not going to compromise on. And ultimately, it led me to quit my dream job. And so resiliency really had to kick in because I was like, well, I don't really have a plan B.
Right. There's not.
But I'm not doing this. Like, this is not what I got into this to do. And so by staying grounded in my ethics, my morals, and my values, and leaving due to something that I just couldn't, I was like, it's not happening. Because of that, I was able to very quickly start my own law practice.
Yeah.
Because I still knew who I was. I was like, okay, well, I have to adapt now. Now I'm not working
Let's
for
go.
Let's
All
go.
right.
Like,
I guess tomorrow's going to look different.
Tomorrow's going to be an entrepreneur. And I swear within like 2 days I had a client, you know, and it wasn't that I wasn't wavering. I was so confident in my decision because I was like, well, I'm opposed to this ethically, that there's no question. And it made me be able to be resilient as a now brand new entrepreneur that I never planned on. And so I think that's how we have to look at it too, is that, and it's not about being stubborn either, because you do have to adapt, but you have to know your line, because if you bend too much, then you will not be resilient because you're going to fall apart because who you are has now been dismantled.
I often ask clients, like, you need to sit down and think about what your red lines are, meaning like, where is the line? What will you not do? Or what do you have to do? Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, this has been fun.
Yeah. And next week, we're going to talk about the imposter phenomenon, which was my topic. So we will see you all next week.
All right. Bye,
awesome.
everyone.
Bye.